Of all the trees that grow so fair, old England to adorn, greater honour beneath the sun than oak and ash and thorn. Sing oak and ash and thorn, good sirs, all of a midsummer's morn. Surely we sing of no little thing in oak and ash and thorn. Oak of the clay lived many a day, or ever Aeneas began. Ash of the loam was a lady at home when Brett was an outlaw man. Thorn of the Down saw New Troy town, from which was London born. Witness here by the ancient triumph, oak and ash and thorn. Sing oak and ash and thorn, good sirs, all of a midsummer's morn. Surely we sing of no little thing in oak and ash and thorn. You that is old in churchyard mould, he breedeth a mighty bow. All the first shoes do wise men choose, and beech for cups also. But when ye have killed and your bowl is spilled, your shoes are clean and worn. Back ye must beat for all that ye need to oak and ash and thorn. Sing oak and ash and thorn, good sirs, all of a midsummer's morn. Surely we sing of no little thing in oak and ash and thorn. Elm she hates mankind and waits till every cusp be laid, to drop a limb on the head of him that anyway trusts her shade. But whether a lad be sober or sad, or mellow with ale from the horn, he'll take no wrong when he lieth along neath oak and ash and thorn. Sing oak and ash and thorn, good sirs, all of a midsummer's morn. Surely we sing of no little thing in oak and ash and thorn. Oh, do not tell the priest our plight, or he would call it a sin. But we've been out in the woods all night a-conjuring summer in, and we bring you news by word of mouth, good news for cattle and corn. Now is the sun come up from the south with oak and ash and thorn. Sing oak and ash and thorn, good sirs, all of a midsummer's morn. England shall bide till judgment tide by oak and ash and thorn.
And we're live. Welcome to the SoNo Show, episode 20. I have often argued that disengaging completely from the system is the best way to break the system. A refusal to comply and to break the dependence on the very system that enslaves, plunders, and works to ethnically displace us. Of course, I am extremely biased on this course of action, as I was raised in a very rural and remote part of southern Appalachia. Also, when I started this channel, my opinions were influenced tremendously by people such as Varg Vikernes and Vegard Solheim, who spoke of the same goals and ideals. Since then, I have learned many things and considered other options in our fight against the system. However, it seems that I keep coming back to these original ideas and opinions. Today, my guest, an Englishman, is a man of direct action in regards to breaking the system by breaking away from the system. And most of you will probably know him. If you haven't heard of him yet, I highly recommend you check out his channel. I put links to it in the description box below. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to the man, the myth, the legend, the Woodlander. How are you doing today, sir?
I am really good. And it's just gone midday here. It's all 1 o'clock, and I realise it's 8 o'clock in the evening where you are. So good evening to all our friends.
It's in the morning, actually.
Is it 8 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
Well, good morning to everyone across the ocean, and good afternoon to everyone watching in the UK and in Europe. Thank you for having me on. You've got a fantastic channel, and I'm pretty sure over the next year or two it's gonna get a fair few subs.
I hope so. I've been doing this for about 2 years, and the growing's been slow. I'm not someone that is, when I started this channel, I'd never used a camcorder before. When I first purchased it, I didn't even know that I needed a memory card for it. I brought it back to our apartment we lived at the time. I was like, oh, yeah, I've got a camera. Wait, you've got to have a memory card, idiot. So I had to go back to the store and get a memory card. So I was really, it's what the young people call boomer tech issues, you could say.
Yeah, well, I'm much the same here. I mean, I'm literally sat on a tree stump in the middle of the woods with
That's
a phone.
beautiful. That's
I've
beautiful.
got no camera, no nothing. But we'll get by. We'll get by. And we can use what we've got, and we can communicate, which is a fantastic thing.
That's one of the greatest aspects, of the modern world, I guess you could say, is sometimes I fret over where technology is taking us, but it certainly has its good and wholesome applications, things that we can use. But yeah, I want to thank you again so much for coming on here. I've watched your channel for probably about 1.5 years or so. I think I was within the first few hundred subs that you had gotten. I think I found you on Twitter. This is how long ago it's been, because I was actually on Twitter back then. That was before I got banned and everything. But yeah, what you do is like a beacon of hope for everybody. A way to, I remember watching your old video where you give us all a walkthrough of your property up there. It's so beautiful. It's so it's idyllic. It's wonderful.
Man, it's a beautiful place, and I mean, every season it has its own particular beauty. But just coming into the summer now, and all the rhododendron are in bloom, and some of these things are 50 foot high, and there's flowers everywhere.
Yes.
And it's an ancient woodland, so I've got like oak trees and sweet chestnut and
You've got
red cedar.
European sycamore too, don't you?
Yeah, we've got the sycamore, which is one of the largest ones here.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic wood. It's a hardwood, so I mean, if you fell a sycamore, you've got enough firewood to last you a year. Yeah, I mean, it's. That
was actually one of the questions I had to ask you later on, but I'll go ahead and ask it now. Is what sort of firewood do you use there in England?
Well, ash is the best, but I don't have any. I haven't got any ash here, but I've got a lot of friends who are tree surgeons, obviously, and anything that's going, they'll bring it up, loads of it stacked up. But sycamore's very good. Oak is very good. And if you want to get the fire started, pine is a really quick burner.
Yeah, it
doesn't give off a lot of heat. But if you want to get the fire going quickly, and it'll keep burning.
Yeah, I know. Fat wood. I've seen Bjorn talk a lot about that before.
Yeah.
See, I hate to admit this, I hate to say this, I've never traveled very much in my life. I've never been outside of the southern United States, unfortunately. It's rare that I get to leave the mountains here. How is the climate in England? I'm just curious.
Well, it used to be fairly simple, where it was you had 4 seasons.
Yes.
And they followed pretty strict rules. But the last 10 years of things are very odd, and it's now we tend to get all 4 seasons in one day.
Yeah.
So it can be raining in the morning and then beautiful sunshine all afternoon, and then it'll end up with hailstones in the evening. But I mean, on the whole, it's a European climate, so it's very cold in winter and not too hot in the summer. So I think the highest we get up to, it gets up to about 32 here. That's it. Yeah, it's nice. It's I like it. Yeah. I mean, if I go abroad on a holiday or whatever, it can get too hot for me.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm quite happy here.
I know. Do y'all get a lot of snow there in the winter?
We have done. The last few years, it's started to snow again in the winter, but we went a good sort of 5 years with no snow, which was very odd. But yeah, we get snow for a fair few months in the winter.
Yeah.
But again, it's not like Canada where you can get 10 foot of snow.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Britain's an odd place. Like, if we have snow for 2 days, the whole country grinds to a halt. We're really not geared up to dealing with anything more than about 2 inches. So more than that, and we're wrecked.
Yeah, I know where I was raised at in northeast Tennessee. Where my land sits there, the elevation is 3,000 feet. We get a lot of snow during the winters up there, even though it's in what you would say is the American Mid-South. I remember when I was 6 years old, we had what we called the blizzard of 1993. We ended up with 27 inches in our front yard. And this hit us in the middle of March, basically. The snow didn't hang around long. But yeah, we get a fair amount of snow up there. Now, I live about 3 hours southeast now of where I was raised. And we get maybe 1 or 2 snows each winter of just about a couple of inches. I know yesterday was a very miserable day down here. It got up to, I don't know what this translates to in Celsius, but it got up to 95 degrees Fahrenheit here yesterday. I was wringing wet as I was working. It was truly miserable. My blood is too thick for this god awful heat that we have here in the South. Yeah. It's horrible.
You see, the UK is or England especially is built on discussing the weather and how bad it is. And it doesn't matter if it's summer or winter. If it's the winter, we'll be moaning about the rain, and if it's the summer, we'll be moaning about the heat. But it's kind of like the go-to topic for most small talk is,
yes,
have you seen the state of the weather out there? But so, you know, on the whole, the strange thing is, living in the woods, it has its own microclimate. So even on a really hot day, it never gets that hot here because of the shade.
Yeah.
And it can be pouring with rain, and yet I can sit where I am now and stay bone dry.
Yeah.
So it's quite a cool little place. And you can kind of see why our ancestors gravitated towards these areas, and they make fantastic habitats. Because you've got the best of both worlds.
Oh yes, absolutely. You know, I believe the woods is where our people, our race, you know, this is where we evolved. It is our natural habitat. You know, oftentimes being out in civilization.
You'll have to excuse the chickens.
Oh no, I can barely hear them.
They're all out today enjoying the sunshine, so you're going to get some crowing going on in a bit.
Oh, it's that adds atmosphere to the show here. I was about to say too, if my dogs start barking, you know, I apologize for that. But you know, the woods and the forests of Europe, you know, that's where we evolved. I think that's why we ended up having, like, some members of our race ended up having blue eyes, you know, because blue eyes are able to see better, you know, in a darker climate such as the woods. And, you know, I get a sort of, well, I'll go ahead and ask you this. This is one of the questions. What are your thoughts on religion? Or you could say the Christian pagan divide. What do you consider yourself? Or do you consider yourself more of like an atheist, or
no? I'm not an atheist.
Absolutely.
I was raised a Catholic.
Really?
So I went to a Catholic school, and I went to church every Sunday up until the age of about 12, which is when I discovered girls and alcohol, which might sound young to some people, but you know, I was quite advanced at 12 years old, so it happened earlier for me. And as soon as I discovered, you know, music, girls, alcohol, the church went out the window, which is a usual story. And I kind of had nothing to do with religion after that. You tend not to during your teenage years.
Yes.
Am I a Christian? No, but I like Christian values.
Yeah.
Am I a pagan? I'm much more drawn to paganism and pagan religions than I am Christianity. You know, you're going to have to look around me. Not every church has a steeple.
Exactly.
So I'm going to say I'm spiritual, and I believe that is a part. That's something that's missing from modernity. Is a spiritual factor. But I'm not sure how I feel really about organized religion. I can see that it's caused a lot of problems. And
yes.
within our circles, that split between paganism or heathenism and Christianity is an argument I don't feel needs to take place. Because I know a lot of pagans, and they really have no problem with someone being a Christian. And I know a lot of Christians who really have no problem with someone being a pagan. For those that on either side that purity spiral, it's time to put it down, and it's not something that we need to argue about.
Oh yeah, I agree completely with literally everything you said. Myself, I was raised Presbyterian, and growing up, I went to church. I liked going to church. I went to a little mountain church. It's a pretty rock church made out of river stone. My great grandfather helped build it when he was 12 years old back in 1927. I liked the people that I went to church with, but I can't help it. I never felt a spiritual connection per se to Christianity. I've read a good part of the Bible, and some of it just doesn't make sense, And I'm like you. Organized religion has caused so much conflict amongst our people for centuries, for millennium, you could say. And like you, I would consider myself not a particularly religious person, but a spiritual person, And I lean more towards, I'm not an expert on paganism by any means, but it's like you pointed around you, the woods around you. Nature is my church. Nature is my temple. And I think it's something. I do a lot of fishing whenever I get my days off. I drive. One of my favorite spots is a place called the Hiwassee River. It's about 45 minutes east of here, up in the mountains, and it's like that is what I consider the true Holy Land. It's up there in the mountains, a beautiful river. There's a lot of the trees. There's a lot of oak, American sycamore. A lot of American sycamore grows on the side of creeks and rivers here in Appalachia. A lot of poplar. There's hemlock trees, which where I live currently here in the Tennessee River Valley, there's no hemlock trees. I feel like I'm back home in a way. I think it's blood memory. I believe completely in blood memory. And that,
it's strange you should say that, all right? Because there's a weird thing happens, and I see this a lot. If you take a boy and put him in the woods with a couple of his mates, within 5 minutes, they're building dens. They're looking for the branches on trees that they can spot within a minute what branch is going to make a bow and arrow, what branches they could use to make traps. And they haven't seen any of this stuff. This isn't stuff you're taught in school, but within 5 minutes, that's exactly what they're doing. And you can ask them, you can say, well, who taught you to do that? And they're like, no one. This is inside. This is genetic memory.
Yes.
And people come, especially boys, put them in a woodland environment and they come alive. They literally come alive because they recognize this. They understand this. And not in any academic level, but just on a purely instinctive basis. And that doesn't come from TV. That doesn't come from education. That just comes from inside. And that's incredible.
Yeah, me and my younger brother used to do the same things too when we were children, playing in the woods back home. And we used to love to build lean-tos. That was one of our big hobbies, was to build lean-tos. We loved building little little campfires. And even to this day, like where we live now is in a neighborhood, but we've got about an acre of land here, and most of it is wooded. I know if I've had a stressful day at work, I can just walk through the gate in our backyard down to the woods into the dry creek bed, and I have a tree there that's fell, and I just sit there. That's where I make a lot of my videos at, actually.
Yeah.
And I will feel so much better. It's like if I had a headache, it's gone. There's some sort of supernatural quality. And it goes back to what you said, about blood memory and such. It's truly a wonderful thing. And I think, with all the prevalence of mental illness here in the United States, in all countries, in our Western nations, I think a lot of it stems from us being divorced from our roots. The people that live in a city, you see mental illness everywhere, homeless people, drug addiction, all these terrible things. And I think a lot of it stems from them living in modernity. They're confined to civilization, and it has a very detrimental effect on our people, I believe.
Again, you're dead right. That mental health problem is caused by modernity.
Yes.
And you said you just walk into those woods, sit on that tree stump, and the headache goes away.
It does.
That doesn't happen when you're surrounded by glass and concrete,
no
traffic noises, TV advertisements, posters, buses, taxis. There's nowhere in a large town or a city where you can just sit and be with just nature. And I wish more people would do it. I really do. Just take a day and get out, because it does you so much good.
Absolutely. It's been about 2 weeks since I've taken me a fishing trip, and I know my stress levels are higher. I'm going to change that a little bit later today. I'm going to go do some fishing, but I can feel it. I don't understand how people have an urban existence. And I mean, even here in this neighborhood, I feel like I live too close to other people. It may sound crude and everything, but I've always looked at it that if you are not able to take a piss off of your front porch without worrying that the neighbors are going to see you, you live too close to people, Man,
I've got to say, that is one of the major problems, though, with living in, I'm in the middle of the woods, and there's no one else here. So I take a piss whenever I want to take a piss,
exactly.
The problem is you get used to that.
Yes.
So I'll then drive into town, and I get out the car, and before I know it, I've unzipped, and I'm like, Jesus, I can't do this. You can't just have a piss. So it's like, you've got to differentiate between the places,
yes.
which is,
don't want to rack up an indecent exposure charge or anything like that. Let's see. Anyways, let's see, it was last week, I believe, I watched your interview with Björn Andreas Bull Hansen. I've always liked his channel quite a bit. And in it, you talked a bit about your off-grid, how you have achieved the things that you have done. Would you like to briefly go over that a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into the reasons why I did it. If people were interested in that, they can go and check out my channel. But I saved up for around 2 years. So we didn't go out to eat. We didn't go on holiday. We didn't go to the cinema. We didn't have takeaways. Every penny I saved, I put in a bag at the end of the bed. I'll touch on why I put it in a bag at the end of the bed in a minute. And at the end of 2 years, I was hoping I would have enough to buy a piece of land. And I didn't. As it transpired, we spent those years driving around looking for a plot. We found one, but I was £5,000 short. So I borrowed £5,000 off my father-in-law. We bought the land. I spent the next year paying that £5,000 back. And then we started to build. So we cleared some of the trees, not many. And I built a cabin. And I didn't borrow money to build the cabin. Whatever I had left at the end of a week after we'd paid for food and whatever, I bought some timber. So instead of going out and going on holiday again, I bought building materials. And bit by bit, we built the place. And we built the chicken pens and the coops for up the front for the livestock. And before you know it, you've got a home. And you don't owe any money on it. And it's off grid. So I put a solar system, so solar panels on a battery bank, rainwater collection system. And all of this stuff is fairly simple. Now, I'm not a builder, but I watched a YouTube video on how to build a shed and then just thought, well, if I upscale whatever he's doing, I'll have a cabin. That was my thinking. And I just followed the instructions. So when he said, I'm going to use a 2x2, I used a 4x4 and made it bigger. And he said, I'm going to go 10 foot, and I went 60 foot. So it's not that difficult. But yeah, so here I am now with a 4-bedroomed home in 2.5 acres of woodland, with no mortgage to pay, no rent to pay, no electricity bill. I use Calagas. I think in the States it's more propane that's used.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But again, it's fairly cost effective. I only use that in the winter for the central heating. Yeah, my bills are next to nothing, really. So it's given me a lot more options. I can either reduce the amount of time I work because I don't need the money, which gives me more time, or I continue to work, in which case I've got a lot more money because I don't have to spend it on what most people spend their income on, which is surviving by paying the mortgage, paying the electricity bills, paying the gas bills. And we produce some of our own food, and some of it we sell as well. So it's it's win-win all the way round. So yes, I'm off-grid, living in the woods, and I'm loving it. And I get a lot of pushback. I get a lot of pushback from people who say, yeah, it looks fantastic. It's obviously a great way to live, but I could never do that. And I'm always confused. Unless I'm like, do you know what? I'm nothing special, and I can do it. So why couldn't you do it? And it's really just a state of mind. They could never see themselves. They have a preconceived idea as well. And they think you live in a cabin in the woods. They picture some, dusty old one-roomed shack, and it's not like that.
Dirt
Do you know what I mean?
floors and everything.
Yeah. I mean, and you can live like that if you want, but I mean, I've got a missus, and if you've ever tried to convince them that's a good way to live, it doesn't work. Like, so when I said we're going to move to the woods, she was like, okay, here's a list of things we need then. I need somewhere to plug in my hair straighteners, and I need a washing machine. And I'm like, well, okay, I better have a think about how I can do this then. For a bloke, it's quite simple. It probably would be dirt floors and no curtains.
Yeah, I know my house back home.
Yeah, but it's the strange thing is it can be whatever you want it to be, and that's good. You can design how you want to live, but there's no one out there that couldn't do it. But there's a lot of people that choose not to, and I think the reason for that is actually they're quite comfortable where they are. They enjoy moaning about it. They do enjoy moaning about it, and I hear nothing but moaning, online and off. But very few of those people moaning are willing to take the step to do anything about it.
Exactly.
And that's frustrating.
That's exactly right. We are unfortunately a lot of times addicted to comfort and convenience. people see, back where I'm from, back where I was raised, it was just a village, you could say. There was not a single traffic light in town. You can't even call it a town. It's a very small, extremely rural place. But if we wanted to go get something to eat at like a big name brand restaurant, a big chain, if we wanted to go to Walmart, we would have to drive 30, 35 minutes away just to go to those places. That's where the nearest town was. People always want convenience. I know in my hometown, people were wanting like, oh, we want a Starbucks up here. I'm like, no, you don't. You complain about all these people moving in with values that are contrary to yours. But when you want all these businesses, all these big corporations to move close by, you're just inviting that sort of thing, and you wonder why your way of living, why your values, why everything is being erased. It's because you're hooked to convenience and comfort. People don't understand that, and it's like you said, I think people are addicted to, bitching, for lack of a better word. They're addicted to bitching and complaining instead of doing.
It's been very clever, though. All right. I mean, the comfort and convenience that you're talking about, and you're dead right, is so ingrained with people that they don't want to give that. The problem then arises is without giving that up, you're not going to be able to take that step to change things. You really need to be prepared to suffer a little bit. And it doesn't mean you have to live like a hermit, right? It doesn't mean you have to move out of your house and live in the woods, right? You could do these steps where you are, but make the decision to do it. So if you've got a garden, grow some food. There you go. And I've spoken to hundreds of people who say, do you know what? That's a really good idea. And they'll never do it. They'll never do it.
Yeah.
And they are dependent on the system. And this is what I've said all the way along. How do you fight something that you're dependent on? You can't. You cannot fight something if it's giving you what you want. You will find yourself making excuses not to fight it. That is what's holding the right back. That is what's holding the right back.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with your assessment. I've got a question here real quick from the chat. My friend Bersingeterix asks, have you ever been hassled by local or municipality authorities or heard of people getting bothered that are living such as you do in your area? Has anybody ever messed with you?
No, not with me. But I'll have to explain. The rules in England or in the UK are really strict. You can't buy a piece of land and live on it. You're not allowed. In fact, if you buy a piece of land or a piece of woodland like I did, you're only allowed to stay overnight 28 days a year on it. After that, you can't.
Yeah.
But underlying all of this planning legislation and rules for this and rules for that, underlying that is a rule. And it's the 4-year rule over here, which is if you build something and nobody has asked you to take it down within 4 years, it then becomes legal. Not legal even, it then becomes permanent. They can't then enforce against it. And I think that's a really, really good way of looking at it, which is if you've done something and no one's had a complaint for 4 years, then actually it's not caused any issue and it should be allowed to stay. So that's the rule I used. And Woodland kind of lends itself to that because I didn't have to deliberately hide anything. By building it in the middle here, I can't be seen. And if I can't be seen, no one can complain. And the truth is, the authorities won't do anything until they receive a complaint.
Well, that's good. That's very interesting. I wasn't aware of the differences in law there about, the 4 years for something to become permanent, as you put it. I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, so thank you for asking that question, Bersingetorix. Let's see. I heard to go back briefly to your operation, your project being off grid. I've heard you say you had a filtration system for your rainwater that you gathered. Um, I was just curious: are there any springs on your property? Any natural springs?
No, I've got no springs here. We did look into getting a borehole done, so I got some pricing for that.
Oh
But
yeah,
it was fairly expensive because of the geological makeup of the area. There's a lot of shale below, and
yeah,
they'd have to go down quite a long way. So for me, I mean, especially in the UK, which rains probably every week,
yeah.
um, just to collect that. I mean, the roof of my cabin's 1,600 square foot of roof, so that can collect a hell of a lot of water,
Oh yeah,
and it's free. It falls out the sky. So there's no
absolutely.
water rates and there's no water bills to pay. The filtration systems, you can buy them online. They're not difficult to rig up, and they filter down to the biological level, so it's completely drinkable. I think the only problem I have with it is because of the amount of leaves that get onto the roof, the water can pick up tannins, and
Oh,
as
and it
much as it
stains
tastes,
it slightly.
yeah, as much as it tastes fine, and it is fine, it can discolor it slightly. But I can live with that.
It's tannins. It's just a little extra. Think of it as a small vitamin shot, perhaps. um, let's see. How do you ever? Are you able to ever get out and do any fishing or hunting, perhaps?
Used to fish a lot with my dad back when I was a kid, but it's not
Yeah.
something I've done for years. There's plenty of good fishing around here. I've got a good friend of mine's got 10 acres with a 2-acre fishing lake in the middle of it. So
Nice.
yeah, I mean, but I'll be honest, with the land I've got here, and I still work as well. So most of my free time is just managing this place. I've still got trees to take down, and I've got fences to put up, and it's quite remarkable how much of everything you need the minute you get into acreage. So even putting a fence up I've got an area behind the cabin which is a garden area, and to stop the 7 dogs running through the whole woodland, I fenced that off. But that's a job and a half in itself. And every
Oh
time I put
gosh.
one fence up, they'll figure out how to get under it. So I've got to redo that bit, and then they'll get over it. So I've got to make it taller. And then the clever ones will get through it. So I've got
Yeah.
it's an ongoing thing, and I should think I've probably got another 10 years work here. But it's all enjoyable.
Yeah.
There's nothing about it that you think, oh, I just can't be bothered with it. I like getting outside. I like using my hands. Yeah. As for hunting, no. I mean, you can in the UK, but it's a hell of a job to get a firearm.
Yeah.
So no, it's not something I do at all.
Yeah. I
However,
understand.
I do know people who do. So I've got a freezer full of venison.
Oh yeah. Perfect. Perfect. That's the key. If you are unable to do something, be able to find people to trade and barter with. I know I don't have any chickens yet. I've been wanting to get a chicken coop, for a couple of years now. I still haven't gotten around to that. But my neighbor that lives just right down the street, she's got some, and we get, free range fresh eggs, every week if we need them. That's a very important thing. And that's actually something I'm sorry we're going to be jumping around with these questions.
No,
My
man,
notes
that's cool. That's cool.
my notes here are very scattered, I guess you could say. I would find one thing, jot it down. But since we were talking about, since we just mentioned, and it's something that you mention often in your videos, the creation of parallel structures a parallel society, and even perhaps a parallel sort of financial system.
Yeah.
The financial system is what interests me. I actually have a degree in finance of all things. I finished college back in 2011. I've never used it. I hate finance. I don't even know why. I basically picked finance because I thought it was something easy, because when I was in college, I was much more interested in partying, drinking, and chasing women, basically. I didn't have time. I didn't have a lot of spare time to dedicate to my studies. So I just picked something I thought was easy, which it was. You've mentioned talking about parallel financial systems. Is this like a barter and trade system, or what did you have in mind?
But this is something I've been discussing recently with a couple of different groups, and I'm still undecided. My whole journey really to being off grid started with a hatred of the financial system. So it was the first thing I dumped, and I haven't had a bank account for 16, 17 years.
Oh man,
I dealt
nice.
only because I refused to partake in something that I thought was corrupt. Why would I? But again, you'll hear a lot of people saying how bad it is, and yet they still have a bank account, a credit card, maybe 2 credit cards, cars on HP. I wouldn't do that. If I needed something, I'd save my money, I'd buy it in cash. End of. So that was 16, 17 years ago. Do I think we need to get rid of the financial system? It's coming to an end. We know that. It's going to collapse. But we need to put something in place so that we can trade. But that's
Exactly.
it. That's the only reason to have any money, a token, is to be able to ease trading between you and me. So if I've got a chicken and you've got a lamp, that's a good swap if I want a lamp. But if I don't want a lamp, but you want my chicken, there's got to be some way we can trade. And money, not as we know it, but money's a fairly good system. But I think we need to come up with our own. And I can't see any reason why we can't. I mean, I mentioned in one of my recent videos, which was if you go to an amusement park, you go there and you use tokens, which you buy when you enter. You give them 50 quid or $50, and they'll give you a certain amount of tickets or tokens, which you can only use in that park. Which for them is brilliant. They've already got their money, but you can't then take them out and use them anywhere else. So it's brilliant. So I'm thinking that to start with, that would be a fairly good idea for our sphere, for our circle, is to keep the money within our group. So it doesn't go to Amazon, and it doesn't go to Walmart, and it doesn't go to Netflix, that actually it stays within our group. It doesn't go to globalist corporations. It goes to small independent traders. And then we can talk about, okay, can we have our own tokens? How would we do that? And how would that work? But it's a discussion that needs, right, to be talked about. Because if we're going to start again, which we're going to need to do, how are we going to do it? We don't want to make the same mistakes as that have already been made. So yeah, I think the financial one is really interesting. It's very easy for people to get bogged down in minuscule detail, and you'll know, having a degree in finance, that you could easily get bogged down. At the end of the day, it's a tool to ease trade between you and me. That's it.
Yes, it's just a medium of exchange. Hopper Perspective mentioned a second ago that we should use eggs and alcohol should be the off-grid currency. Yeah, we'll make some moonshine for you, Hopper Perspective.
Well, I've got lots of eggs, and I'm only too willing to swap them for moonshine.
Oh yeah, we'll have us a good exchange here. You know, we'll have us a bazaar. Let's see. Southern Nordic. Did you know the Appalachian mountain chain continues into Britain and Scandinavia? Yes, I have actually read that before. It goes under the Atlantic Ocean with, I believe, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Yeah, very interesting you brought that up, Hailstorm. Let's see. Another question. If you don't mind me asking, what led you to become a dissident? What tipped the scale, I guess you could say?
For me, this started when I was 12 years old, quite young.
Yes.
And it's a short story, so I'll tell it. In the town I lived in, which is a small town, there was a group of, there was lots of different groups actually back then. There was youth culture. So you had mods and punks and skinheads and rude boys and all these different fashion groups, these youth cultures. And you also had a group of colour kids. Now, I was fairly small when I was young. I'm not massive now, but I was short. So my dad taught me, you're going to have to stand up to yourself, for yourself. Otherwise, people are going to pick on you. This group of coloured kids would run an extortion racket with all the other children. They'd go round and ask them for money. And if you gave them money, they'd leave you alone. And if you didn't give them money, they'd punch you in the face. Small-time stuff. We're 12-year-olds. But I would never give them money. And I would stand and fight every week in the hope that eventually they'd leave me alone. And they did, but it took a fair few years. So I took a good amount of beatings. And in the end, my dad got fed up with it and dragged me down to the police station, and they refused to do anything because the kids were coloured.
Wow.
And they didn't want to cause a load of grief. And it ended up with the local race relations officer, who was quite high up, sat in my front room explaining to my dad that, you know, maybe he could possibly have a word with some of the parents, but best not rock the boat.
Wow.
And I remember my dad throwing him out of the house, literally in fits of rage, and saying things like, "This is going to lead to mob rule. You can't allow people to do what they want, right? Because you're terrified that they might get even worse." And I think if you look at what's happened in this country and America today, he was absolutely right. But that left me in a situation where I was looking at, okay, why won't they do anything about this? Why are they worried that this group of people could get violent and things could get out of hand? So I started looking at the race riots that had happened the years before. And what was that about? And that led me to literature and groups that were talking about it. And the only people that were talking about it back then were far-right political groups like the National Front. So I was reading literature from them. I was reading their magazines, and I was thinking, okay, this kind of makes sense. I can actually see both sides here. I can see why the police don't want to do it, because it's going to end up like a running riot down the street. And I can see that this group over here is right, and they're saying there's no way we should allow these people to be able to do what they want, because in the end, that's exactly what they'll end up doing. So yeah, it started when I was very young and progressed onwards from there.
Very nice. That's interesting how you brought up your dilemma, how you were being how these coloreds were attempting to extort you. Let's see, a few months ago, I have a cousin from back home, and he got into drugs and everything. I think he ended up getting into a little trouble. And they gave him the option to go to a halfway house. He's got to stay there for a year. He keeps him a job, gets clean. his halfway house is actually in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is just about an hour. Knoxville is the midpoint from where we were raised, where I was raised, to where I live currently. But I went up there to see him it was about a month ago. I took him some stuff up there, some supplies, and just wanted to hang out with him because I hadn't seen him, in a few years. And back when I was into drugs and everything, he was like a voice of reason for me. It just kind of shocked me when I heard he was going through all this trouble, because he used to look out for me and be like, you don't need to be doing what you're doing, to see him in that situation, made me quite sad. But anyway, he's working at a job up there, and he was working in a packing house, a meat processing place. And it's 5 white guys and 1 black guy living in basically just this little house in downtown Knoxville. And it's interesting because all those 5 white guys are having to work at the same job. They work different shifts. They have to pay rent every month. Yet there's the 1 black guy there. My cousin told me he hadn't worked in 6 months, hadn't paid rent in 5 months, yet they won't kick him out. He said if it was any of them where they're white and they did this, they'd be on the street just like that. They would end up in jail, violating their program, their probation or parole.
And we've literally got to that point, and we know this, right? We know this because they wouldn't do anything about those 12-year-olds.
Exactly.
They then grow up to be 30-year-olds doing exactly the same.
Yeah, extortion rackets, It's just, it's absolutely, we've reaped what we've sown, unfortunately. And and it's us that's paying for it. The common man, the common woman, the common child, that's who's paying for it. The government, the officials and all that, they live in their, safe neighborhoods, their gated communities and stuff, while our people are out here having to deal with the consequences of all this. Let's see if I can find another good question here. Since we were just speaking about crime, in one of your latest videos, your latest video, System Collapse, you mentioned that the crime statistics for England, the clearance rate, which clearance rate is how many of these crimes are solved. The clearance rate for all crimes in England between murder, assault, burglary, robbery, larceny, all those things, is only an abysmal 9%. I was absolutely shocked when I heard you mention that statistic the other day. What do you think the problem is?
That was just one point. There's so many things wrong. I think the whole system is at a point of not working. It doesn't work any longer. But people nowadays in the UK don't even report crime. There's no point. There is literally no point. They don't report theft. If you get mugged on the street, you probably wouldn't even report that. Because there's no point. No one's going to be charged with anything. It's just going to take up more of your time. So why would you? So crime continues to rise, and yet the police will tell you that actually there's a lot less crime. It's not a lot less crime. It's just that people aren't reporting it because nothing ever happens when they do. And their own statistics tell you that out of 100 crimes, they solve 1 or 2. The rest of them go unsolved. It's an incredible failure, but everything is failing. The health service is failing. We know that. The education system is failing. The police system is failing. The housing system is failing. So you're actually living, right, in the collapse. The system is collapsing. It will reach a point where the public start noticing in a minute. At the moment, they're still blinded with McDonald's in one eye and Netflix in the other. But in a minute, they're going to notice, and that's why we're seeing these steps towards global governance. Because when the public wake up and say, hang on a minute, nothing's working anymore. I can't phone for an ambulance. Nothing's coming. I can't phone for the police. They don't do anything. They're going to start saying something needs to be done. And the problem is nothing can be done within this system. The system is broken. So they're going to offer them something else. They're going to offer them a global solution. And most people are going to jump at that because it will be a solution. But it's not the one we should be looking at. We need to design our own.
Exactly.
It is possible.
You know, here in America, the police are in the news, especially with the recent Uvalde, Texas shooting that happened, I guess, a few days ago. I have to admit, I've not kept up with a lot of these shootings or anything because it's like really it's nothing new to me. I mean, you know, it's a lot of people debate whether it's like a type of false flag. You know, I heard rumors that the Buffalo shooter was groomed by the FBI. I wouldn't be surprised in the least by such things because, I mean, we're ruled by monsters, in my opinion. But, you know,
I think you covered this in your last video, and I think you were absolutely dead right when you said, does it matter? Does it matter?
It doesn't. You know, and that's
if
something I think...
If it's a false flag or if it's not a false flag.
You know, it doesn't really. I mean, what can we do about it? You know, I think the pitfall that a lot of dissidents fall into is, say, they get red pilled. You know, I can't help it. I'm tired of hearing red pilled, blue pilled, all that. You're either aware or you're not. But for the sake of brevity, from my opinion and experience, it seems like a lot of people take the red pill and then they feel it eventually turns into the black pill. You know, they become aware of things, of race and what's going on. But, you know, once you learn so much, you feel hopeless a lot of times. You can end up being depressed. And unfortunately, that can lead to nihilism. And nihilism is something that's extremely destructive. And, excuse me, that's a huge problem. And, you know, actually just last night, I looked up the Department of Justice statistics here in the United States. For some reason, the latest that I could find was the 2017 statistics, which was 5 years ago. But I'm going to read them off real quick. I was shocked at how Britain's, you know, clearance rate was 9%. This was 5 years ago. The violent crime overall for all agencies reporting was 45.6% clearance rate. That means they solved 45.6% of the crimes. Murder and non-negligent manslaughter, 61.6%, fairly high, almost 2/3. Rape, only 34.5. Robbery, 29.7. Let's see here. Arson was 21.7. Burglary, 13.5%. Aggravated assault, 53.5%. You know, I don't think we're quite, which this was 5 years ago. I would hate to know what it is today because we had more murders in the year 2020, you know, the summer of love with the St. Floyd and his, you know, all the protests and such. And I found an article saying that the murder clearance rate was, I think, 47% for the year of 2020. For at least here in America, I think what is leading to a lot of this is the diversification of the police force. And it's also the police force, a lot of times, they're working in a community they have no connection to. I think you actually mentioned that in that video.
Yeah.
You know, a cop working in a city lives a couple of towns over. He's not concerned so much with what's going on there. Going back to the Uvalde shooting, the police force down there is receiving they're catching hell right now because basically they let a lot of those children get killed in there. They wouldn't storm in there, take care of business. And, you know, that got me to thinking, cops are supposed to protect and serve. I'm not a fan of the police. I never have been. Like, I used to be a criminal for the obvious reasons. I don't like police. But my dad, my father, is like the most moral person I know. He has a sterling reputation back home as a man of his word. He's not a man with any vices, but he never liked the police either because they're authority. And he said, he taught me when I was young, before I got into all these things, that we should always be leery of people that have authority over us. I think it's the diversification of the police force. Is it like that over in England? Do you see a lot of immigrants becoming cops?
Yeah, I mean, our police force now spend more time doing TikTok dances and painting rainbows on their cars than they do solving crime, quite obviously, which is what they're supposed to be doing. And I would love to say that questions would be asked and that something would be done, but sadly it won't. We're too far down the road with the decline for anything to be done. What are they going to do? Throw more money at it? It's a broken system. But this has been my argument all along, which is, look, we know the system's broken, so we're going to have a choice here, which is we either design our own and start it now, or we wait for them to offer the solution, right, that they want. And I don't think the system's broken by accident. I think they designed it that way. I think they've broken it on purpose, so that they can offer this solution. And it's not anything that's going to be good for us at all.
Absolutely. Let's see. Talking about criminality and stuff, something that I have often thought, and I've heard some of my friends talk about this as well, our people are becoming a minority in our homelands. And, another thing, I know I'm a little scattered here, I'm jumping around a bit, but, something that I will say for dissidents is I would never call the police, if you can avoid it at all costs. If you're a dissident, I know there's been people, I think Chris Cantwell is one here in the United States, George Lincoln Rockwell, all them decades ago, they made the mistake of calling the feds or the police whenever they thought trouble was coming. I can't help but feel that as dissidents, you're better off not calling the police if you've got a problem. If you can handle it yourself, know how to defend yourself, do what you can, because if you call the police, they're going to, be poking around. They may cause problems for you. I've seen this happen in my past. People, friends of mine that, may have gotten robbed or something. For some stupid reason, they call the police. I'm like, why are you calling the police? You're a criminal already. What are you thinking? They're just going to nose around and they end up finding something to be like, oh, hey, we found you with this, in your house, I don't understand it. I think that as we become a minority, our people might ought to look into forming a sort of syndicate, you could say. Not necessarily like, I'm not talking about a crime family or a crime syndicate, but we need a sort of, we need a way of policing ourselves, taking care of our people. And this is even on a local level. Like you talk about localism, I think we could, put this sort of thing to use, forming a sort of syndicate to, police ourselves, to become a little more self-dependent, reliant.
There's lots of groups. There's lots of groups that do this. I mean, before we went on air, we spoke a little bit about people like the Amish, the Hutterites. In the UK, we've got the travelling community. And these groups, in the UK, we've also got a hell of a lot of Muslims, believe it or not.
Yeah.
All of these groups police themselves. They have their own set of rules. You'll find that they're not telephoning the police if they've got a problem. They have their own set of rules. They know what they're doing, and they police themselves.
Exactly.
There's no reason we can't do that.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, and I mean, you look at history here in the United States, during the basically from the 1880s onward, whenever these immigrant groups like the Italians, the Irish, even the Jewish population, they would form these little syndicates in order to operate and police themselves here in the United States, which, of course, I think the mafia was started as this, but, unfortunately, I think these sort of syndicate things can be subverted and they become all about crime, all about money, instead of they lose sight of what their original purpose was. I've just got a question for you. Have you ever heard of a group that was called the Holy Vame? Have you ever heard of that by chance?
No. Tell me about it.
The Holy Vame was a sort of secret society. Now, this is something too, a lot of people will think I'm off the mark here, but it's something that I've heard one of my close friends mention often is, we could use secret societies, in order to get things done. But of course, we're all aware of Freemasonry, the Rosicrucians, Opus Dei, and the Catholic realm. I think these things can be subverted very easily. But the Holy Vame was a sort of secret society that was founded in Westphalia. I'm not sure how you pronounce it there in Germany I believe it was during the 1200s. During this time, Westphalia was a lawless region, a lawless territory. There was a lot of crime. But this Holy Vame, they were a secret society of warriors. And it took about a few decades, but they absolutely cleaned up Westphalia. They made it a very safe place to travel. It was very interesting what they did, and they used vigilante justice. I can't help but I think vigilante justice is much more effective than any law, any court system that we have today. Now, of course, over the 200-year operation of the Holy Vame, early on, they enjoyed the support of the Catholic Church, but as time went on, they became powerful, and eventually they ended up becoming corrupted, unfortunately. But that was just something interesting, like in the future, I thought that perhaps something like that could be used. Hopefully it wouldn't be subverted and corrupted. But anyways.
All of these things, right? All of these things that you're bringing up are pertinent to what we're going to need going forward. And I've been saying this for years, right? If we're going to build a parallel system, one, we better know where we're going. So let's get a destination. And then how do we do it? And these are the discussions that need to take place, which is okay. If we can figure out where we're going, how do we get there? Like, what steps do we need to take? Do we need a police force? Can we utilize the one that is already in place, or do we need our own? How's that going to work? Without these conversations, it's difficult to take the next step. So You're dead right at the financial system. Okay, if we're going to replace it, how? What with? Let's not make the same mistakes. Do we need a financial system at all? Do you know what I mean? Could we work on just sharing stuff out? And there'll be people who go, that's communism. And brilliant. Let's have the discussion then. Let's have the discussion. How's it going to work? How do we get to where we want to be?
Yes.
Right? Because it's never going to be as simple as some of these people believe, which is okay. You stop immigration, and some of them go back home, and what? And the system's brilliant, is it? You've still got the financial system, you've still got the globalism, you've still got these corporations, you've still got the degeneracy, right? So it's not fixed. It's the system that's broken, okay? And that's what we need. We can't fix it. It's beyond fixable. What we can do, though, is start again. And you start small. You start locally. You start with a small group. And then you work out how to work it perfectly. And then you duplicate it with another group and another group. This is how good things start. I mean, to look at successful businesses, something like McDonald's, when that started, it was one restaurant. There you go. And he got it working, and he figured out what works best. And then what did he do? Did he open another one and change it? No, he opened another one and copied exactly what worked the first time. and then another one, which is exactly the same, which is why I go in a McDonald's down the road is exactly the same as a McDonald's 3,000 miles away in a different country. They're all the same.
Absolutely. You know,
So what
and
we
that's-
need to do is get one group working, iron it all out, and then duplicate it.
Yeah, we need a template for the system,
Exactly.
and something that can be replicated. You know, like what you've done there with your project going off the grid. That's a template that we all could learn from, and hopefully, you know, enact over time. Let's see here. Okay, I watched your video from the video "The Way We Win." You were talking about parallel societies. We've discussed that already some. You mentioned the situation in Czechoslovakia whenever they were under communist rule, how they established their own sort of parallel system. Excuse me. But what also really resonated with me too was your thoughts on the facade of Western liberal democracy in that video. And, you know, you mentioned something that really struck a chord with me is how we can learn to use the system's weaknesses against itself. You know, like you mentioned in that video, Western liberal democracy wants to keep up this facade that it's not some brute tour de force, you could say. Is there any other things you'd like to add to that? Other ways we could maybe use the system's traits?
This is again why I'm suggesting that we start now, because I'm damn sure that in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be much more difficult. We've seen how they can react. We've seen what happened with the truckers in Canada. Okay, we've seen how totalitarian this system can be. And they're now starting to ratify legally a global system. The World Health Organization has kind of been set back slightly on this, their next phase, but only slightly. So we start now, and we do use the system. To get where I am now, I didn't break any law, not one. I didn't even have to bend a rule. What I did do is find out exactly what I could do, right? And exactly how I could do it to make it work. I used their system against them because it's there and we could do that. If I can do this as a single person, and I said earlier, 10 people could do this quite simply. Now imagine if you had 20, 25 people to do this. And this is an argument for those people that say to me, I would love to do it, but I can't afford it. Okay, get 25 of you together. Now, instead of that land costing £25,000, which you can't afford, actually it's £1,000. And do it together. Now you've got 25 people with no mortgage to pay, no rent to pay, no bills to pay, who have got a lot more spare income. They can put that into that community, into their group. Get that working. Get that working well. Do you know what will happen? People will want to join it. So you could either get bigger, or what I would recommend is actually you duplicate it. You don't need to go massive. You don't want a thing of thousands of people. You want lots and lots of smaller groups doing the same thing. And then you can work together. All those groups working together. Now you can start to build culture. We need to do this. But we need to start now, because if we try to start in 10 years' time, right, it's likely they're going to crack down much harder.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I liked how you just put it right there. That also struck a chord with me is, you know, keeping it small. You know, I believe that we are tribalistic in nature. You know, we may talk about, you know, globalism and stuff. Even those people are tribalistic in nature. There's a thing called Dunbar's number, which is some guy named Dunbar obviously postulated that, you know, the human mind is supposed to work by, you know, we work in a tribal system. You know, and I've thought about this before in my own life. I've met a lot of different people over my life. But in Dunbar's number, it said that we operate the best with a tribe of about 250 people at the most. At the most. I think, like you said, keeping it small, because, if you get all these people wanting to join, you want to get a huge mass. It's hard to keep track with that, and then there's a lot of people that could get through the filter, you could say, that may have nefarious intentions. So yeah, I really agree with what you said there just a second ago. Tribalism and localism, I can't help but feel that's the future as things deteriorate.
But there's a beauty to it as well, because what you'll find is, out of those groups, even though it's duplicated, you'll find that maybe one group is more artistic than another one, and you'll find that they'll start pulling people in that are artistic. So you'll end up with a community of artists, which is fine, because we need art. And you'll find that people are artistic, either won't want to be there or are quite happy. But the ones that don't, maybe they're more into engineering. They'll go to that group over there, which has got a lot of engineers, and they're building stuff. And all of these groups can interact. I'm not going to say you're going to end up with a group which is just artists, but you'll find that different groups will specialize in different things. You might have one that's really good at farming. That's fantastic, brilliant. That you'll find that they'll start producing more food than the other groups. Excellent, right? Because now we can give them more money and buy the food from them. It's just a brilliant way of doing it. Instead of trying to cram everyone together, you've got this huge group which you can't control. You can't control it once those numbers get to a certain size. Keep it small.
Yes.
Keep it small within that template that works, and it's got to have some flexibility as well. And you'll find that these groups will start working, and they'll be homogenous, and that's what people want. People will feel comfortable, and you can move between those groups then.
Oh yeah, it's like our European history. These ancient tribes, Germanic, Celtic tribes, they would, whenever the girls would come of age, or the young men, they would a lot of times go off to another tribe and marry in, and that kind of brought both of these tribes together. It's something that something worth looking into.
What I've just explained on a really small, basic level is Europe. Okay, so we're all Europeans, and there's a European culture, right? But if you break that down, there's also European countries. Like the Frenchman is pretty different to the Scandinavian, and the Scandinavian's quite a lot different to the Spaniard, and the German is quite a lot different to the Englishman. Yet we're all European, but we've got these separate groups, and different groups are good at different things. And it's great. That diversity within that one family is fantastic.
Yes.
So you might say we've got a European template, but it allows for flexibility and it allows for difference. And that's nice. I can go to Spain on holiday and enjoy Spanish culture because it's slightly different from mine, but I enjoy it because there's still that similarity.
Yes, absolutely. Let's see. I'll ask another question here. The next question was from your video, "We need to start now." You mentioned the obvious futility of the two-party system in this video, and also that you became active in more smaller political groups that advocate for our cause. Yet you found that these were oftentimes ineffective as well by channeling a lot of constructive energy, criticism, and drive. They channel it into dead ends, unfortunately. I can't help but feel the exact same way that you do regarding this. I've never joined any formal political organization or anything. The only times in my life that I've actually ever voted was in 2016 and 2020. Yeah, I voted for Trump, even though, I was disappointed with the results. He could have went all the way, but he didn't. And, I believe that's how it was designed. I can't help but feel, political activism, I guess it serves a purpose, but I think there's a lot more constructive things we could be doing, which is, following your example. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I do. It kind of depends on how you're going to quantify politics, because I think what we're doing now is political to a certain extent. But I think even wanting to be part of the political system we've got is wrong. This system is bust and broken, and I can tell you what happens is, even if you start off with a really good idea and good intentions, by the time you've managed to become a political party, play their political games, temper what you're saying so that you can gain more popularity, by the time you get to a position where you can actually achieve anything, what you're capable of achieving is zero, because you've become part of the system.
Exactly.
That's all you are. The system will just absorb you like the Borg.
Yeah, off of Star Trek.
Yeah. So
you will assimilate.
Once you kind of understand that, yes, but that's what the system does. It will take you in. It will take all of those ideas. It will squash them and push them out. And in the end, you would end up being
the very thing you fought against originally.
Exactly that. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen with small parties. I've seen it happen with people that get involved in politics, in mainstream politics, that by the time they become, up there where they think, I could become an MP, everything they started with is gone. Everything they started with is gone. So it's, no, I think these groups would be better off being non-political, in that sense that we do not. In fact, I think they would get more attention and more popular support if they said to the public, we're not going to take part in this system. This system is broken. That party, and that party are all the same, right? And the system is broken. Do not vote for them, right? It makes no difference. We're going to work outside of that. What we're going to do is start working with the community. We're going to start putting forward things, right, and building things for ourselves. But we're not taking part in that corrupt system. The public would get behind that. The public would understand that, because I hear people saying all the time, and these are normies that go, what's the point in voting? Why? If I vote for them, I vote for them. Whoever I vote for, guess what? It's a bunch of fucking idiots that get in. They know that. They know there's no difference between the left wing, the right wing. They know there's no point in voting for down the middle. Whoever they vote for, the trajectory is always the same. It just continues in exactly the same line.
Exactly.
They're not completely stupid, but they don't know what to do about it. But they would get behind someone who said, no, we're not playing your game. Your game is corrupt. Your game is broken, and the people deserve better.
Yes, exactly. I agree completely. And, excuse me, I think that whoever be the first person to actually say something like this and try to follow through, I would think that they would be scorned at first by a lot of these more, prominent political parties or groups or whatever. But, I think they would be shocked. And the people that was, refusing to play the game, I think it's like you said, they would be shocked at how much support they would garner, and actually how quickly they would probably garner that support. It's very interesting. But yeah, I agree completely with your opinion there. Let's see, anything else here? Oh, this is something that I was interested in that I seen you post on your Telegram channel a few days ago. You mentioned Ted Kaczynski and his, the power process. I think it was the Fergan, who had done an interesting podcast on Ted Kaczynski. I'm not asking you what your opinions are on his actions that led him to prison, but do you have any? What was your thoughts on the power process, over socialization and surrogate activities? I think he was ahead of his time. He was spot on. What's your opinion? Anything you'd like to add to it?
That part of his manifesto is 100% right, and he just saw through the bullshit. He just saw through it, and I think most of us do as well. And he explained it in a certain way, but we can all see this. We can all see that actually, nearly everything nowadays is fake. It's all fake. And it's down to that comfort and convenience that we spoke of right at the beginning. I've used this one before, which is there was a woman who used to live in a caravan on Dartmoor, and the name always slips my memory. But she was a little old lady and lived on her own. And the BBC went down to do an interview with her. And when they were filming, she was outside and she was collecting twigs and sticks for a log burner. And she went in, and it took about 20 minutes. And she lit the fire, and she stoked it, and she put some bigger logs on, and she put the kettle on, and she made them a cup of coffee whilst they were filming. And the reporter said to her, "Man, don't you just want to live in a normal house? I've just watched you spend 20 minutes just in order to boil that kettle." And she said, "Yeah. And you live in a house where you just turn on a switch?" And he said, "Yeah." And she said, "And that takes you 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 40 years to be able to turn that switch on."
That's brilliant. That's a brilliant.
And she was dead right. And that's the difference between authenticity, which is okay. If I need to hit some heat, I need to go and pick up some of these sticks, and it's going to take me 20 minutes, but I've got heat and I can boil my kettle, and that's it. And it's cost me nothing. Or I go and get a job, work 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for the rest of my life, so I can switch a switch and save myself 20 minutes.
That's
fake. And that's fake. And people will say, "Yeah, but it's convenient." And you think, "Wow, man, you really haven't got it yet, have you?"
You're missing the point here.
You're missing the point. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the way I live out here, I don't want anyone to think that it's a hardship, but I enjoy using it. I bought a log splitter, and I rarely use it because I quite like using the axe to split the wood.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I
it's
quite
therapeutic.
like the way. Yeah, man, and I'm not going to joke. It's hard work as well. Do you know what I mean? You swing that axe for 20 minutes, half an hour, your shoulders are aching. You start chopping hardwood and sycamore and oak. It's not easy, but at the end of it, there's a sense of achievement, and then you stack that. And I can't use it for a year, but then the following year, when I go and get it, I can kind of remember when I was chopping it, and it's just real. It's a real thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I put that on my log burner, and we'll sit round in the evening, and it's a beautiful thing. It's authentic. I get that. I understand it.
Yes. That's a very good point you brought up there. I've got another question from Bersingetorix. He asked this several minutes ago, but it's on my mind, so I want to go ahead and get this out of the way. When can we expect Bjorn, Andreas, and Woodlander to meet up and do a camp in the woods?
Well, he's in Norway, and I'm in the UK, and I've got no plans to go over to Norway. But if he's ever over here, I've already said he's quite welcome to come and stay, and we can do a bit of camping around there. Yeah, I mean that'd be cool. It'd make a good video.
Yeah, it would. Absolutely. It'd be some good content. You mentioned a second ago about how everything is a facade. I was raised in an extremely rural and remote part of Northeast Tennessee, up on a mountain, basically. A few years ago, to get clean off drugs, basically, I moved down here 3 hours away. I live in a neighborhood now. And something that struck me, and I've heard my friend Patrick Siegeman on his channel talk about this often, is how fake American suburbia is. It really is. My woman, she even picked up on this I thought it was, interesting that she made this observation. One thing I've noticed about living in suburbia is everything is a facade. Everything back home in the rural areas was more genuine, more real. People weren't so caught up in consumerism, although that shit is unfortunately leaking into rural Appalachia, you could say. And that's one of the biggest, like everyone here wants to keep up with the Joneses. They want to have the latest, newest, this or that, and people show off. I live in a decent neighborhood. I mean, it's mostly white. It's a good neighborhood. The kids run up and down the street. It's good. But I have noticed in our interactions with some of our neighbors and people that we've met while we're out walking our dogs, and she picked up on this. Women are a lot better at picking up on social cues, I believe. But she was like, wow, don't you just get the feeling that a lot of the people here, they're nice to you, to your face, but they're probably just talking bad about you behind your back? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's probably true, but I don't pay attention to such things usually. If someone says hey to me, make small talk and go on. But that's something that I have noticed over our couple of years of living here at this house is there's a certain facade. Is things like that over in Britain? Is things like that over in your country?
Yeah. Again, it's just modernity, though, isn't it? It's
yeah.
People. We talk a lot about people being atomized, living on their own, having no connection to community, and that's true. That is true. And that was confounded really in the 80s with the cult of individualism, which is, do the best you can for yourself. Look out for you. No one else is going to do it. And all these sort of go-getter yuppies all really caught on to that and sadly passed it down to the next generation, where people think that they don't need anybody else. It is just about them and what they can get and how good they can do for themselves. And as long as I'm okay, Jack. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work. What you end up with is a society of people that exchange minimal small talk, and actually they'd probably rather not even be talking, because all they're really interested in is themselves and
or their screen,
their
smartphone,
job, and nothing. They're interested in a smartphone or whatever. There's no spirituality, right? And there's no community, and there's no reality to their existence. Everything is fake.
Yeah,
their job's fake. Well, I mean, the thing is, most jobs are fake. Well, they don't need to be done anymore. Most of these things are just there to keep you controlled.
Yeah.
So, and they're all that going back to the power process. Everybody's involved in doing stuff that they don't need to be doing because they feel they should be doing something. And slowly but surely, that'll drive you mad. Because deep down, you know it.
Deep it's down, a vapid existence. It's a hollow, vapid existence,
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any other questions here? I was going to ask you, my friend Tasia, she wanted me to ask you, have you heard anything about kids in Wales who are having their school lunches? The school children in Wales, they're having their lunches being supplemented with, bugs. Yeah, exactly. Oh, so you're aware.
Yeah, well,
so you're aware.
I'm not sure they've actually replaced the meals with. I think what they're doing is they're running a test, and at the moment they're just talking to the kids about, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea if we all ate bugs? The thing is, they're starting with the kids. They'll start with the kids, and they'll get. It's very simple to get a 9-year-old to go, yeah, that's a brilliant idea. That's a brilliant idea. And then they say, well, you should be talking to your parents about this and telling them that they're wrong to be eating beef. Don't eat the cows when we could just be eating maggots instead. But kids will take that on board, and then they'll go home and they'll nag the parents. And then in 3 months' time, when the parents are in whichever shop it is and the maggot burgers are available, they'll end up buying them. They will end up buying. And it's yes. I mean, this whole insect thing is, we kind of know where it's come from. The lab-grown meat, the plant-based meats, the insect burgers, which are all going to be massively available. And then they will increase the price of beef, chicken, and pork so that you can't afford it. And eventually they will try to stop you having your chicken in your backyard. They'll find a route round you to say that you can only have chickens if you're registered. You can only register if you've got 5,000 chickens. So you can see how they're going to do this. And you'll have nothing but maggot burgers in the end. And this is why I'm saying we need to start now, because they're already starting to implement this stuff.
Yeah.
Within 10 years, you're not going to have a choice. At the moment, me and you can discuss this on the internet, which is brilliant. Other people can listen in and have an opinion. That's fantastic. We've just passed that online harms bill, online, don't upset people bill, whatever the earth is. Within 5-10 years, we won't be having this conversation. They won't allow it.
Yeah.
They'll say, no, that's dangerous. So you won't be able to do it. Yeah. And that's when these ideas won't get out to people. People then won't be able to see that there is actually an alternative. Actually, he's right. Actually, that chap's right. Actually, I heard something the other day of someone who's actually done it. Because they will squash that. And the reason they'll squash that is because it's dangerous to them. They can't afford for people to see an alternative.
That's exactly
because if
right,
that alternative works, people start flocking towards it.
Yes. You mentioned that in one of the videos I watched of yours last night. You mentioned those exact words. Yeah, I was going to say, I've went through my notes, I believe, pretty well here. I was going to give the chat, anybody here watching, do y'all have any questions for the Woodlander? While I might ask one more thing here. If you got any questions, feel free to post them and I will ask him. One thing you talk a lot about is localism, and that's something that I really, I think people need to focus on. Myself, I'm extremely focused on rural Appalachia here where I live. I don't look much past the mountains, although, I'm interested in learning and I'm interested in our people's struggle. And I'd like to support it in some way if I can. But you talk about localism. Have you ever read any of the articles that I've seen like prominent? I think there was one on Vox a couple of years ago. these horrible, leftist media outlets. They talk about, fascism in farmers markets. Have you managed to read any of those?
No, I don't read newspapers. I don't read magazines, and I don't watch TV. And I kind of just, if I've got an idea, I've probably come up with it myself, to be honest. And if I've expounded upon it, then that's probably due to experience of something I've come across in my life. And that's really all I'm talking about is like, look, I found this way for me to disengage and live my life better. Now that's possible for any individual to do, but wouldn't this be great if actually we could do it with maybe a few more people and get it working as a community? And that's really what I've been trying to do over the last year and a half, is just get this idea into people that, one, it's possible. Two, you could do it as a group. And once you've ironed out all the little niggles and got it working nicely, you can duplicate that. And therefore you'd end up with a parallel society, a whole parallel system, which wouldn't be going down the route that they want us to go down. And at the moment, all I can see is they're actually just herding us by any means possible, by pandemics or like financial situations or wars cropping up wherever. All they're doing is pushing us into a corral where they want us. And I just can't see it being any good for us.
Oh, it's not.
I've kind of come to the conclusion of, okay, let's look at a global situation and what is it these guys want. And at the end of it, I think it's that they don't want very many of us here. I've got to say that, which I kind of understand. If I'm dealing with livestock, I would be much the same. If I've got all these things and they're just costing me money to feed and I've got to build stuff for them and I don't really need them, they're not actually providing me with anything, then I would get rid of a load of them.
Yeah.
And have a smaller number.
Absolutely. I think I mentioned to you in our chat before we actually started streaming, the Georgia Guidestones, they talk about world population control. Let's see. We've got a few questions here. My friend Dawning Armor asks, does Woodlander have any fruit trees?
I do. I planted them 3 years ago. So I've got cherry, apple, and pear, which is quite nice. Good selection.
Yeah. That is a good selection. My friend Hans Hugren, he's got an interesting channel on YouTube. He asked me, are there any tips in how or where to garner land for oneself? How did you find your place, if that is not too personal?
No, that's cool. I did mention we actually drove around evenings and every weekend for nearly 2 years just looking at land. We looked at agricultural land, we looked at woodland, we looked at, little bits tucked away on hillsides, trying to find the right location for us. And then when this place came up, it was really, it was perfect. It had everything we wanted. So we had to go for it. You can look online if you just type in land for sale, and then you can narrow that down to woodland for sale. There'll be websites on there. Contact your local land estate agents. Give them your email and say, look, if anything comes up within this price range, or just tell them what you're looking for. They'll email you. It's within their interest to get it to you because you might buy it. So, yeah, contact them.
Oh, yeah. Very nice. Let's see. We've got another question from 14 miles to the right. What does the Woodlander think of Clarkson's farm? I'm not entirely sure what that is, 14 miles to the right. Have you heard of it, the Woodlander?
Yeah, I have heard of it. Clarkson was a presenter of a TV program called Top Gear. I mean, I don't know if you watch it in the States. I haven't seen one episode of Clarkson's farm, so I can't really comment on that. Do I think it's good that he bought a farm? Yeah, great. Good for him. Yeah, nice that he bought a farm. That's all I can say. I haven't watched any of it.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, one just popped up right now. Vengul asks, does Woodlander have any cattle? A couple of friends of mine have 8 now that graze near my house. Looking forward to getting access to fresh milk. Yeah, raw milk, man. That's what you need. What about it, Woodlander? Do you have any cattle?
I haven't got any cattle. Nearly all my livestock's poultry and fowl. Although we are looking at goats and we have discussed pigs as well, but not cattle. So I've made friends with people that have sheep and have cattle. See, again, this goes back to what we were saying. Some people will be able to do some things, some will be able to do something else, and then you work together. You don't need everything in one place.
Exactly. It's like you mentioned earlier, you don't do any hunting, yet you have a freezer full of venison. It's perfect, Parallel systems, baby. Parallel systems. Anyone else got any questions? We've been going for about an hour and 45 minutes. I don't want to take up too much of your time, Woodlander. I know
I've enjoyed it, mate.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it too. I'm tickled to death. You were able to get your phone to work outside. I thought about going out here on my back porch, and you could see the trees in the background. But I was like, I don't know. The internet may be a little hairy out there, you could say. I want to thank you so much for coming on here. I've watched your channel probably since shortly after you got started. I've always really admired your work, and tickled to death to finally get you on here. And I just want to go ahead and say that maybe we could do this again sometime months down the road in the future. The door is always open.
You know what? I think that would be a really good idea, to actually catch up in a couple of months, maybe. And, let's see what, because you're going to get people that watch this later and they're going to have questions. I tell you what, everyone who watches this, bung your questions down in the comments, and in a couple of months' time, me and Nordic, we can get together and we can go and answer them. There'll be stuff that you think of in a day's time. Go back, bung the question in there, and let's start moving things forward. There's a much better future for us lot, but we've got to start now, because trying to start in 5 years, 10 years, they're not going to allow us.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this to be cocky, but I'm sorted. Do you know what I mean? Personally, I'm literally sorted. I've got everything I need here, right? But I'd like as many as possible, right, to be in that position. And it doesn't mean you have to live in the woods or in the middle of a field, right? But it does mean we need to start thinking and talking about how we move forward. That's why your channel, right, is fantastic. You sit there, you give your point of view. It's never negative. I was going through your stuff, and it's like it never. I never come away feeling
sometimes. It can be negative, but I always try to finish with something that's uplifting. I might give you the hard, cruel news, but I'll leave you with something to pick you up a little bit with.
There's nothing wrong with telling people what's going wrong, right? But we need to start coming up with some answers as well. And I think we've got them between the group, and all these different people. The answers are there. Let's start implementing.
And that's something I've heard you mention that you do as well. You've helped some other people, work on acquiring land and stuff. They email you, I guess, and you've tried to assist them, give them pointers and such. That's a very admirable thing that you're doing. Trying to help other people to do something that they think is an immensely daunting task. Something that they often think they can't do. That's brilliant. That's very kind of you. Is there any closing remarks you have? Anything at all? Are you there?
Yeah, I mean, some of them contact me on Telegram. Some of them contact me through email. I think there's up to, I think we're seven or eight now.
That's awesome. Outstanding. Anything else at all? You'd like any closing remarks? Anything at all? Hello? Hello? Are you there?
I think
there's a delay. I think there's a delay right now.
Yeah, you're okay now, but there was a delay a minute ago.
Yeah. Oh man. But yeah, anything else at all you would like to say? Any closing remarks?
Just thank you very much for having me on. Hopefully we can get together in a couple of months. That would be brilliant. Thank you to the chat. I did mention I can't actually see the chat, but I hope that's been okay. And thank you for everyone who's watching. And I'll see you soon.
All righty. Well, I was just going to say everyone in the chat was brilliant. That's something I don't really have to deal with often, is like trolls or, smart asses coming and, giving me hell. That's something I don't have to deal with very often. But I want to thank you again so kindly. It was so kind of you to come on here and speak with me. And, yeah, chat, I want to thank y'all for watching. And if you're not aware of the Woodlander, which I'm certain most all of you are, I put a link to his Telegram channel and his YouTube channel in the description box below. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening if you're in Europe, or a wonderful night, perhaps, if you're in Australia, or if you're here in America, have a wonderful day. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.